My brother was dating my fiancée, and my father gave him the family business and the house, so I set them up and…" Daniel had always known that his younger brother, Ryan, was the favored one. Their parents never said it outright, but it was clear in the way they treated him. Ryan was the miracle child, the baby they had after years of difficulty, the one who almost didn't make it. Their mother especially doted on him, lavishing him with attention, excusing his every mistake, while Daniel was expected to be the responsible one. The reliable son. The one who would do what was needed without asking for anything in return. Their father owned a small but respectable electrical business, a company built from the ground up with decades of hard work. From the time Daniel was old enough to hold a screwdriver, he was expected to learn the trade. And he did. He worked alongside his father every summer, absorbing everything, becoming the skilled electrician his father had always envisioned. Ryan, on the other hand, was never held to the same standard. He was allowed to slack off, to coast through school with mediocre grades and half-hearted efforts. When he flunked out of college, their parents consoled him instead of holding him accountable. When he lost thousands of dollars in a series of reckless investments, their father simply shook his head and bailed him out. Daniel could still remember the way his father spoke about Ryan's failures. "He's just trying to find his way. Not everyone figures things out right away." But when Daniel made even the smallest mistake, ordering the wrong part for a job, coming home late from work, he was met with lectures and disappointment. By the time Daniel was in his 20s, he had become the backbone of the family business. His father might have still been the boss in name, but Daniel was the one keeping things afloat, modernizing their operations, implementing new technologies, securing bigger contracts. Meanwhile, Ryan would show up sporadically, often late, sometimes not at all. When he did work, it was half-hearted at best. And yet, their father never reprimanded him, never expected him to carry any real responsibility. It burned Daniel, but he kept his mouth shut. He had long since learned that complaining would do nothing but make him seem bitter. Instead, he poured himself into his work, determined to make something of himself outside the shadow of his brother's endless second chances. It was on a job site that Daniel met Emily. She wasn't like the women he had dated before. She was sharp, independent, and fiercely driven. She worked in project management for a construction company, and from their first conversation, Daniel was captivated by her confidence and intelligence. She wasn't just beautiful. She was the kind of woman who took charge, who didn't wait for things to be handed to her. Unlike Ryan, she had worked for everything she had, and Daniel found himself drawn to that. They started dating, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like someone truly saw him, not as the forgotten son, not as the backup plan, but as a man with value. Their relationship grew over the years, built on mutual respect and shared ambition. Emily understood his frustrations with his family, even if she never outright criticized them. She saw how hard he worked, how much he sacrificed, and she supported him in a way no one else ever had. After 4 years together, Daniel proposed. It wasn't a grand, over-the-top gesture, just the two of them at home, a quiet moment of certainty. She said yes without hesitation, and for the first time in his life, Daniel felt like he was building something for himself, not just for his father's business or for the sake of keeping the family peace. Emily became more involved in the company, helping him manage the administrative side of things while he handled the electrical work. With her sharp mind for organization and strategy, she streamlined processes that had been outdated for years. Under their combined leadership, the business began to thrive in ways it never had before. But even as he and Emily planned their future together, even as they worked side by side to turn the business into something truly successful, Daniel couldn't shake the lingering resentment toward Ryan. Because no matter how much Daniel did, no matter how much he built, his father still refused to see him as the one who should take over the company. Ryan was still the favored son, the one who had failed over and over again yet still remained untouchable. Ryan had never shown any real interest in the family business. For years, he treated it as nothing more than a fallback, a place he could drift in and out of without consequence. But suddenly that changed. Almost overnight, he started showing up at the office on time. He asked questions about accounting, contracts, and operations, things he had never cared about before. Their father was thrilled, seeing it as proof that Ryan was finally maturing, finally stepping up. Daniel wasn't fooled. He had spent too many years watching his brother fail upward to believe that this was anything but another phase. Ryan's enthusiasm never lasted long, and Daniel assumed this would be no different. He told himself it didn't matter. He had Emily, and together, they were building something that went beyond the family business. At least, that's what he thought. Emily had always been Daniel's partner, both in life and in work. She had a natural talent for organization, and her efficiency had transformed their business operations. So when she started spending more time at his parents' house, supposedly to help Ryan learn the systems, Daniel didn't think much of it at first. She was patient, and if anyone could make Ryan focus, it was her. But then things started changing. Emily began guarding her phone in a way she never had before. She changed her password, something she had never done in all their years together. When Daniel asked about it, she laughed it off, saying she just wanted more privacy. But privacy from what? From him? The wedding plans, which had once excited her, suddenly seemed like a burden. Every time Daniel tried to bring up guest lists, venues, or even simple details, she brushed him off. "We have plenty of time," she would say. But there wasn't plenty of time. They were supposed to be sending out invitations. Instead, Emily was spending her evenings with Ryan, helping him get caught up on the business. And then there were the looks. Daniel first noticed it at a family dinner. It was a small gathering, just their parents, Emily, Ryan, and himself. He was used to his father doting on Ryan, but what unsettled him was the way Emily and Ryan interacted. Inside jokes, quick glances, a closeness that hadn't been there before. Ryan would say something low under his breath, and Emily would smirk, shaking her head as if they were sharing some private joke. When Daniel asked what was so funny, Emily just waved it off. "Nothing, just something from work." Ryan smirked. "Yeah, it's kind of an inside thing." Daniel tried to brush it off, but the pit in his stomach wouldn't go away. It only got worse from there. One night, Daniel walked into their bedroom to find Emily sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone in her hand, typing furiously. As soon as she saw him, she locked the screen and put it face down on the nightstand. "Who are you texting?" he asked. She hesitated, just for a second before saying, "Just work stuff." "With Ryan." She scoffed. "Why does it matter?" Because it did matter. Because ever since Ryan had started his sudden interest in the business, Emily had been different. More distant. More guarded. Daniel didn't accuse her of anything that night, but the doubt had already sunk in. The following week, Daniel had a long day on a job site and ended up coming home earlier than expected. When he walked through the door, he heard voices from the kitchen, Emily's and Ryan's. He stopped in his tracks. "Daniel won't suspect anything," Ryan's voice said, his tone low and confident. Emily sighed. I don't know. I feel guilty." Daniel's blood turned to ice. He stepped into the kitchen, and both of them snapped their heads toward him. "Guilty about what?" Daniel asked, his voice tight. Emily's face went pale. Ryan, on the other hand, just leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, a slow smirk spreading across his face. "Relax, man," Ryan said. "We were just talking about work." Emily nodded quickly. "Yeah, just business stuff." But she wouldn't meet his eyes. Daniel didn't say anything else. He just turned and walked out of the room, his mind racing. That night, he barely slept. The humiliation of it all clawed at him. The way Ryan smirked, the way Emily got defensive, the way she had started changing, it all pointed to something he didn't want to admit. But he wasn't going to ignore it anymore. The next morning, Daniel made a decision. He was going to find out the truth. Daniel was on a job site when his phone rang. He barely glanced at the screen before answering, "Emily." But the moment he picked up, he knew something was wrong. Her voice was ragged, choked with sobs. "Daniel, I need to talk to you. Please, in person. I can't do this over the phone." His stomach clenched. "Emily, what's going on? Please, just come home." The desperation in her voice sent a chill down his spine. He left immediately, heart pounding the entire drive home. The moment he stepped inside, he found her sitting on the couch, eyes red, hands trembling. He had never seen her like this before. "Just tell me," he said, his voice sharper than he intended. She took a shuddering breath and looked up at him, her face twisted with guilt. "I'm pregnant." Daniel stared at her, the words slamming into him like a punch to the gut. They hadn't been trying, but they also hadn't been preventing it. A child. Their child. He should have been happy. But something about the way she said it, something about the way she wouldn't meet his eyes, told him there was more. She was still crying, but she forced out the next words anyway. It might not be yours." Everything around him seemed to freeze. The air, the walls, even time itself. He felt like he was watching his own life from outside his body. His voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Emily sobbed harder, shaking her head. "Daniel, Just say it," he snapped, the patience draining from him like water through a cracked pipe. "I've been having an affair," she admitted. 4 months. His breath hitched. He already knew. Deep down, he had known something was wrong, but hearing her confirm it, made him feel like his entire world had caved in. "With who?" Emily squeezed her eyes shut as if saying it out loud would make it worse. Ryan. A ringing filled Daniel's ears. It was impossible. Not Ryan. Anyone but Ryan. He stepped back, shaking his head, as if distance could make her words untrue. You're lying. I'm not, she sobbed. I told him before I told you. He knows about the baby. Daniel turned and left without another word. The drive to the family business was a blur. The only thing he could see in his mind was Ryan's smug face. He could hear the way Ryan used to say, "It's an inside joke," the way Emily used to brush off his concerns. He had ignored it all, convinced himself it was paranoia. He stormed through the front doors of the office, barely registering the shocked looks from the employees. Ryan was at his desk, pretending to work, but when he looked up and saw Daniel, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, but more than that, arrogance. Daniel didn't stop walking. He didn't say a word. He just pulled back his fist and punched Ryan square in the face. Ryan crashed to the floor, clutching his nose. Blood dripped between his fingers. Jesus, what the hell? You slept with my fiancée, Daniel roared. You got her pregnant. The office was silent except for the ragged breathing of both brothers. Ryan pushed himself up, wiping blood from his lip, and gave a bitter chuckle. I didn't force her, you know. She came to me. Daniel lunged, but before he could throw another punch, a strong hand grabbed his arm and yanked him back. Their father. That's enough. His father's voice rang out, hard and sharp. Daniel spun to face him. You're defending him? Their father didn't even hesitate. Yes. Daniel recoiled as if he had been struck himself. He's your golden boy, huh? Daniel spat, chest heaving. Even now. Even after this. His father didn't flinch. Ryan's going to be a father. He needs stability. The business should go to someone who's going to build a future for his family. Daniel felt like he had been winded. You're giving him the business? Their father nodded. It makes sense. Emily knows how to run the office. Ryan's learning. And they have a baby on the way. Daniel let out a bitter, humorless laugh. You expect me to just walk away? After everything I've done? After all the years I spent keeping this place running while he did nothing? His father's face was unreadable. If you're not willing to help your brother succeed, then maybe it's time you move on. The final blow. Daniel looked at Ryan, who was now standing, a smug, satisfied look on his face. Looked at Emily, who had somehow ended up in the doorway, silent, watching. He had given his life to this business. He had built it up, modernized it, made it thrive. And yet, in the end, none of it mattered. His father had chosen Ryan. Emily had chosen Ryan. Everything he had worked for, his job, his family, his future, had been handed over to the brother who had never earned anything in his life. Humiliation burned through him, but he refused to let them see him break. Daniel turned, walked past his father, past Ryan, past Emily. He didn't say another word. He just walked out the door. Daniel didn't look back. He left everything, his family, the business, the house he had once shared with Emily. There was nothing left for him there. He refused to be the man who clung to something that had already been stolen from him. If his father wanted to reward betrayal, if Emily and Ryan wanted to build their life on the ashes of his, then so be it. 2 weeks. That's all it took. Ryan and Emily wasted no time, rushing into marriage like it was some great love story instead of the wreckage of Daniel's life. His father paid for the wedding, a quiet courthouse affair, and then helped them buy a house, something Daniel had never been offered, despite years of dedication to the family and the business. The message was clear. Ryan wins. You lose. Daniel's mother had the decency to sound hesitant when she called him afterward, her voice careful, as if she was walking on broken glass. I thought you should know. I don't care, Daniel said. She sighed. It's not what you think, honey. It just made sense for them to get settled before the baby comes. Yeah, he said, his voice flat. It always makes sense when it's Ryan. She hesitated. Your father thinks. I don't care what he thinks, Daniel cut in. And if this is what you called for, don't bother again. There was silence on the line, and for the briefest second, he thought she might apologize. That she might say she was sorry for what they had done to him. Instead, she whispered, I just don't want to lose you. Daniel's jaw clenched. Then don't. He hung up. He started fresh. A competitor had been after him for years, trying to lure him away from his father's company. The moment they heard he was free, they jumped at the chance to bring him on board. Not only did they offer him better pay, but for the first time in his life, he was treated with respect, recognized for his skill, his knowledge, his ability to lead. There was no miracle child here. No favoritism. No second chances handed out to screw up. It was a business that valued hard work, and Daniel thrived in it. Without the weight of his father's expectations or Ryan's endless incompetence dragging him down, he threw himself into his work. He set his sights on earning his master electrician license, something he had always planned to do but had put off because of the business. Now, with nothing tying him down, he studied harder than ever. It became his obsession. Early mornings, late nights, every spare moment spent pushing himself further. His personal life became almost non-existent. He kept to himself, never answering the phone when his mother called, never responding to the few mutual friends who reached out, awkwardly dancing around the topic of Ryan and Emily. It didn't matter. He didn't want to hear about them. But the world had a cruel way of making sure he did. One afternoon, Daniel was at a supply shop when he heard laughter, a familiar, grating sound that sent his stomach twisting. Ryan. He turned instinctively, and there they were. Ryan and Emily, walking through the aisles like any normal couple, Emily's belly just beginning to show. Ryan had a hand on her back, guiding her through the store, grinning like he hadn't torn his own brother's life apart. Daniel felt something inside him snap. He turned away, his fingers digging into the metal shelf beside him, forcing himself to breathe. Just walk away. Just leave. But then he heard Ryan's voice. Hey Dan. Daniel didn't move. Wow man. Been a while. Daniel turned slowly, his expression unreadable. Emily shifted awkwardly beside Ryan, glancing away, as if she had the nerve to feel uncomfortable. Ryan, however, looked smug, confident, like he expected Daniel to just accept everything. Daniel forced himself to keep his voice steady. What do you want? Ryan smirked. Just saying hi. Daniel stared at him, not responding. Ryan cleared his throat. Listen, man, I know things got messy. But, it worked out for the best, right? I mean, we're married now. Baby's on the way. You've got a new gig, heard you're making more money. So, all in all, no hard feelings, right? Daniel just looked at him. No hard feelings. No hard feelings for taking everything from him. No hard feelings for making him the outsider in his own family. No hard feelings for stealing the life Daniel had built, for turning him into nothing more than an afterthought. Ryan was waiting for him to say something, maybe even to laugh it off, to act like they were still brothers. Daniel just smiled. Then, in a calm, quiet voice, he said, I hope that baby looks nothing like me. Ryan's smirk faltered. Emily flinched. And Daniel walked away. Months passed. Daniel worked. He studied. He passed his master electrician exam with flying colors, officially earning the highest certification in his field. He didn't celebrate. He just kept moving forward. His mother called less frequently. She had finally stopped trying to bring him back into the fold. Maybe she realized he meant it when he said he wanted nothing to do with them. But then, one night there was a knock on his door. He debated ignoring it, but something told him he shouldn't. When he opened it, his mother stood there, eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place. She swallowed. Daniel, you should sit down. And he knew. Something had happened. Daniel stared at his mother, the weight of her words settling over him like a storm cloud. Ryan ruined everything, she whispered. Her voice was tired, as if she had aged years since the last time he had seen her. Daniel didn't respond. He only stepped aside, silently inviting her in. She hesitated before entering, her hands wringing together. She looked small, fragile, nothing like the woman who had always stood beside his father in quiet agreement, defending Ryan no matter what. She started, but her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. He destroyed the business, Daniel. Daniel remained silent. He wasn't surprised. He had seen this coming from the moment his father handed Ryan the company. But hearing it confirmed still made his stomach twist. His mother sat on the couch, staring at the floor. He cut corners, hired cheap labor, unlicensed workers. He tried to save money, but she let out a shaky breath. He didn't renew the business insurance, Daniel. He let it lapse. Daniel clenched his jaw. Of course he did. He took out loans, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Huge ones. Behind your father's back. He said he needed to expand, to modernize. But all he did was dig us into debt. And then the lawsuit started. Lawsuit. Daniel exhaled slowly, feeling the full weight of what that meant. Ryan had always been careless, but lawsuits meant he had gone far beyond his usual incompetence. It meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. His mother wiped her eyes. 3 major clients. Commercial projects. They sued for code violations. Electrical failures. One of the buildings nearly caught fire, Daniel. Faulty wiring. And because the insurance had lapsed. She trailed off, shaking her head. We're on the hook for all of it. Bankruptcy. That was what she was really saying. The company was done. Daniel sat down across from her, rubbing a hand over his face. He wanted to feel something, anger, satisfaction, even relief, but all he felt was tired. "You came here to tell me this because you want something," he finally said. His mother flinched. "I don't." "Yes, you do," Daniel cut her off. "Just say it." She looked at him, her lips trembling. "Your father needs help. We need help. If we can find a way to fix things, maybe." Daniel let out a short, humorless laugh. "Fix things?" She flinched again, and for the first time in his life, he didn't care. "You want me to come back," he said. "Daniel, please," she begged. "It's your father's legacy." "That's funny," Daniel said, leaning back. "Because when I wanted to be part of that legacy, he handed it to Ryan instead. And now you expect me to clean up his mess." His mother didn't answer. Daniel sighed, shaking his head. "Where's Ryan?" Her face darkened. "Gone." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean, gone?" "Emily left him," she whispered. "She took the baby and disappeared. Just left a note. Said not to contact her." Daniel blinked, stunned. Emily, who had betrayed him, married his brother, and thrown away everything they had built together, was gone? He almost laughed. It was poetic, really. She had chosen Ryan over him, and in the end, she had left him too. "And Ryan?" Daniel pressed. His mother hesitated before whispering, "We don't know." That surprised him. "He took money from the company account. All of it. Drained them. We think he ran." Daniel stared at her, waiting for the guilt to set in. The regret. The moment she would admit they had been wrong about everything. About Ryan, about choosing him over Daniel, about handing him a future he never earned. But she said nothing. Of course she didn't. Because even now, after everything, she would still find a way to justify it. Daniel stood up. "I'm not coming back." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "But I told you before," he said. "I'm done with all of you." Her face crumpled, but he didn't let it affect him. He walked to the door, opening it. "You should go." She hesitated, then stood, her shoulders slumped. She walked past him, pausing in the doorway. "He's still your brother, Daniel," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his face unreadable. "No, he's not," he said. And then he shut the door. Daniel had always known this day would come. It was just a matter of time. He was at work when the call came. He glanced at the screen, saw his father's name, and let it ring. He had nothing to say to him. Then the voicemail came through. "Daniel, please. I need to talk to you." The voice was different from the one he had grown up hearing. No authority, no certainty, just desperation. Daniel almost deleted it without listening, but instead, he played it back, letting the words sink in. "The business is gone. Your mother and I, we have nothing. Ryan ruined us, Daniel. I was wrong. I know that now. But please, son. I need your help. We need your help." Daniel sat there, phone in his hand, waiting for the anger to rise up. But there was nothing. Just silence. His father was begging, after throwing him aside, after choosing Ryan at every turn, after acting like Daniel's hard work had meant nothing. Now, he wanted help. Now, when it was too late. Daniel didn't call back. Days passed. Then weeks. He heard from others what had happened, how his parents had been forced to sell their home, how they had packed up their lives and left the state, too humiliated to stay. His father's legacy was gone. And Ryan? Ryan had vanished, running from the mess he had made, just like Daniel knew he would. Daniel didn't feel satisfaction. He didn't feel anything at all. They had made their choices. And now, they were living with them. Months later, a text message appeared on Daniel's phone. A number he had long since deleted. Emily. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. He had no interest in whatever excuse she had for contacting him. But then he read it. "Daniel, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But you deserve to know the truth." He frowned, scrolling down. "The baby, she's yours. Not Ryan's. I found out months ago, but I was too ashamed to tell you. Ryan knew. He stole everything from me and ran. I have nothing, Daniel. I thought you should know." Daniel sat there, the weight of her words pressing down on him. His child. Not Ryan's. His. For months, he had thought he had nothing left tying him to that part of his life. He had walked away, burned every bridge, and now, here she was, dragging him back. But she wasn't, was she? She was asking for nothing. Just telling him the truth. For a long time, he stared at the message. Then, slowly, he typed a reply. "I'll handle custody through legal channels. I will not have direct contact with you. Do not reach out to me again." He hit send. And then he deleted her number. Daniel had spent his entire life drowning in his family's toxicity. But not anymore. He had built something new, something real. He had a career he loved, respect he had earned, and for the first time in his life, peace. And he wasn't alone. The woman beside him, the woman who had stood by him through it all, who had never once made him question his worth, reached for his hand. "Are you okay?" she asked. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel bitterness. He felt free. He laced his fingers with hers and smiled. "Yeah," he said. "I am."